Welcome back. All right, so as I continue to look through teams that missed the playoffs in 2025, we're now up to the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers were not supposed to miss the playoffs in 2025. In fact, they were coming off of a President's Trophy winning season the year before. The move where Barclay Goodrow ends up in San Jose stirred up a lot. Jacob Trouba wasn't happy about it. Trouba ends up being traded to Anaheim. There was a lot of talk about a split in the locker room. They made the trade for JT Miller, which helped until it didn't. And the season ends with them just kind of being mediocre. And that's just where the New York Rangers found themselves. So a change had to be made. Peter Laviolette out as the head coach, and Mike Sullivan hired pretty much as soon as Pittsburgh parted ways with their longtime head coach. So the Rangers are intent on getting back next year. You don't hire Mike Sullivan because you're not planning on making the playoffs, and I don't blame them. They're not in a position where they need to do any kind of a rebuild. It's just a matter of getting guys out of the funk they were in last year and hoping that a fresh start makes things better. Looking at this team's record month by month and keeping in mind they only missed the playoffs by 6 points. They weren't that far off. They started the season in October 6-2-1. There was no indication that there were any problems. November they went 7-7, so not fantastic, not awful, especially with the 4 games above 500 from the month before. But December the bottom falls out. They went 3-10 in the month of December, and while they tried to dig their way out the rest of the season, just the damage was done there. In January they went 8-3-3. In February they went 5-4. In March 6-6-3, so they won a little less than half their games there. And in April they finished out the season 4-4. So overall, this is what you call a learning experience. Learning experiences normally aren't, positive. It's not like you come back from vacation and go, man, that was an amazing learning experience. Can't wait to do that again. But anyways, for the New York Rangers, there are some interesting questions about what the picture is going to look like moving forward, not just for this season, but beyond. Let's take a look at their scoring leaders this season, and we'll discuss in a moment here. Artemi Panarin, the leading scorer for this team this season, 80 games, 37 goals, 42 assists, 89 points. Sadly, last season he got to 49. I get the feeling that might be as close to 50 as he ever gets. 37 this year, still good, but it's not getting closer to 50. Mika Zibanejad, the much often discussed Mika Zibanejad, 82 games, 20 goals, 42 assists, 62 points. Yes, I think Mika can play better. Whether or not he does, I think he's kind of stuck with the Rangers. I think the Rangers are kind of stuck with him as well. Fox, 74 games, 10 goals, 51 assists, 61 points. I don't know if he's one of the more underrated defensemen in the game. I'm sure Ranger fans will say that he is, but I do think he is somewhat underrated at this point for what he provides for them. The likely future captain, Vinny Trocheck, 82 games, 26 goals, 33 assists, 59 points. I'd argue that Trocheck, you could make that argument that he could be their MVP this season. Just for his two-way play, for his leadership, and for, being willing to be that face for the team, talking to the press with everything else that was going on. Will Cooley had a really, really strong start to the season in terms of his offense. Not as hot in the second half, but hey, 82 games, 20 goals, 25 assists, 45 points. I would not be surprised if Cooley ends up at the 30-goal mark next year. Lafreniere, a bit of a setback for him this year. 82 games, 17 goals, 28 assists, 45 points. I know he's been labeled as a bust for years. I disagree with that. I will say, though, with the amount of money that he's making on the cap next season, a lot of pressure is going to be there on Lafreniere to produce. And then JT Miller played 32 games with the team after returning from the Vancouver Canucks. 13 goals, 22 assists, 35 points for Miller. He was a -2 over that time period as well. Miller, that's the thing with him. You will get the offense. At times, his two-way game is really good. At other times, it can be a bit of a misadventure. I say that from watching him in Vancouver for a long while. Chris Kreider, 68 games, 22 goals, 8 assists, 30 points. Kreider, his name came up in trade rumors last season. I would expect they'll come up again this year. We'll see how his contract ends up looking in terms of whether or not you can trade that contract. Then you got Othman, played 22 games, 2 assists, a bit snake bit for them, but seen as a solid young forward for them in the future. And Gabe Perreault just played 5 games. After signing out of the NCAA, he did not record a point. The expectation is he will record a lot of points as a Ranger starting next season, where, of course, he is still eligible to be a rookie and potentially go for the Calder Trophy. Perreault's it's going to be interesting to see which line he ends up on and what the plan is with him going forward. And then you get to the goaltending. Igor Shesterkin, who I've talked about for years as being who I believe is the best goaltender in the league, takes a bit of a hit this year. 27, 29, and 5 record, 905 save percentage. I still think Igor is a very good goaltender, but he has had a couple of seasons now where the numbers just don't support him being the number one goaltender in the game now. Which was my argument a couple years ago. Jonathan Quick, 11-7-2 record, 893 save percentage, and he's coming back for another year. So Jonathan Quick as the backup makes a lot of sense, but it does mean Igor's going to play a ton of games, and he's probably going to play even more next year than he played this season. The one caveat to that is that with it being an Olympic season, it's going to be a very condensed schedule, so maybe he doesn't play as many games, but when we look at how condensed the starts he has are, we'll see how that all turns out. Scoring. So looking at the team stats, they scored and allowed 3.11 goals per game, so they scored and allowed the same amount of goals. In terms of goal scoring, that was 12th in the National Hockey League. In terms of defense or goals against, 19th overall in the NHL. So they're going to want to just bring the goals against down next season, which speaks to the defense and it speaks to the goaltending as well. Their power play used to be fantastic to the point where a lot of people said they were power play merchants. And this year it dropped to 17.6%, which is 28th. And you have to think that played a large role in them ending up outside the playoff picture. 80.3% on the penalty kill. That is 11th overall in the NHL. That's good enough to be in the playoffs. But again, that power play number kind of stands out. Now, when they had a lead after 2 periods, they were almost unbeatable. 28-1-5. The issue with that is not having the lead enough after 2 periods of play. And scoring first, similar story. When they scored first, they were 26-8-4. When they were trailing first, they were 13-28-3. So that first goal was of all importance. They were not a team that was great at comebacks this year. And that speaks to confidence and just to maybe some disorganization. And maybe it was just this feeling of, well, here we go again as soon as that first goal goes in against your team. Now, they don't have a lot of cap space, $8.42 million as of July the 1st. They have some pretty big contracts here. It's going to make it difficult for them to make any improvements, especially with the RFAs that are out there. And I wanted to target and mention just a few of their RFAs. Panarin, $11.64 million cap hit for one more year. So one more year of Panarin's contract, and it will be interesting to see if they decide to extend him, if he decides to stick around, what's going to happen there. Zibanejad, $8.5 million cap hit till 2030. So if your belief is Zibanejad's useless, he sucks, he's terrible, the bad news is the rest of the GMs in the NHL would have an impression of that as well and not want that contract. One of the rumored deals with JT Miller before the Rangers actually made the trade was that there was a 1-for-1 offered where Zibanejad would go to the Canucks, Miller would go to the Rangers, and the Canucks turned that down. Now, JT Miller's contract is part of the Rangers, $8 million until 2030. So Miller at this point is in his 30s. He is still scoring at above a point per game, but at some point in time that's going to slow down. If you're the New York Rangers, that's why it's important to try to make sure you're returning to the playoffs in 2026. Kreider, $6.5 million cap hit until 2027. He just had the 30 points this year. They want a little more points from him. The goals are okay at 22, but you'd probably prefer it's closer to 30. Lafreniere, $7.45 million cap hit until 2032. So for Lafreniere, the expectations are going to be high this year, or the pressure is going to be high, one way or the other. But when you're taking up that much cap space, 45 points and 17 goals, and he's young. I still think he's trending in the right direction, but he was quiet at points this year, which has to be at least somewhat concerning for the Rangers. Adam Fox, $9.5 million cap hit till 2029. That's a bargain. Adam Fox in today's marketplace would get, I'd say, at least $11 million a year, at least, if not more. So Fox is a bargain contract for a few more years yet. That's a benefit to the team. Shesterkin's $11.5 million cap hit goes until 2033. So they have 2 players with a cap hit of $11.5 million or more, one of those expiring next summer. And that means they'll have some cap space the following summer, because I can't see Panarin getting $11.64 million per year on his next contract. The restricted free agents of note this summer, Cooley's going to get paid. I would think a long-term contract makes sense there. Keandre Miller, and there's some difference of opinion on Keandre Miller and how much he should be worth and all that fun stuff. So we'll see how much Chris Drury thinks he's worth this summer. And Kaliev. Kaliev's a player that I don't know if he's going to get a qualifying offer. That's why his name's on the board. Kaliev comes over from the Kings, and it didn't really work out much better in New York than it did in LA. So Kaliev may very well find himself as an unrestricted free agent, because if you don't qualify your restricted free agents, they just go straight out to market. So one other question mark with this team, and I haven't seen an answer to this as of yet, will the Rangers hold on to the number 12 draft pick? Will they move that number 12 draft pick to Pittsburgh? Because if they don't, then it's an unprotected 2026 first round draft pick going to Pittsburgh. And I don't think you want to risk a potential number 1 draft pick going to your division rival if you have a bad season. So I think the number 12 pick gets transferred to Pittsburgh, and that the Rangers just don't have a first round draft pick this year, which is kind of too bad, because I do feel like with the Rangers, there are some aging players on this roster. We may see them over the next few years trend more towards where Pittsburgh's finding themselves now. I do think that they're going to be able to, this summer with the right moves, keep themselves in the playoff hunt and get back above the line next year. But at some point in time, every team has to go through that retool or rebuild process. So Chris Drury as general manager got extended. There's been a lot of opinion on the job that Chris Drury's done with the New York Rangers. It sounds like his bosses are perfectly fine with the job he's doing, and they want him to continue. And Mike Sullivan hired as coach. Should help to boost this team's chances of making the playoffs next year. So that's the question I have for people watching this. Do you think that the New York Rangers return to the playoffs next season? What do they need? Do they need a little more depth up front? Do they need more depth on the blue line? I really think they need Shesterkin to get back to that dominant game that he was playing a few years ago. I think that it would be great if Kreider could get back into that 60-point range rather than 30. And, of course, for JT Miller, he has to stay at that point per game range or higher. And it is that work in progress. At times, this two-way game's great. At times, it's not. A little more consistency, but there's a lot of players you can say that about in the NHL. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support, as always. I will talk to you again soon.